And here in the first frame is the first day of my life. This is right after I was born in the hospital. You don't see my mother there. It's interesting that the first person I bond with after I'm born is my father. And I think this is sort of foreshadowing of my relationship to my parents in the future. But this movie basically spans the time between the day this picture was taken and the day my father died, the man in this photo. So I'm going to take you through this amazing photographic journey from images I really didn't know existed until just a few days ago. This is another picture of me from the day of my birth in Queens, New York, which is the same place of birth as my guru, Adida Samraj, who was born in Queens in 1939. And here I am following quickly on his heels. I was born fully formed, eyes open, awake, black head of hair, ready to go. This picture is quite indicative of my presence or personality, really from the first day of birth right up until the present. As is this photo. Here I am, getting my diapers changed by my mother, Christina. My beautiful mom with her beautiful breasts. And here I am. Really, this is, what got me here to incarnate this lovely, hopeful, intimate, affectionate bond with my mother, my beautiful, attractive mother, Christina. So I say, let the Oedipal races begin. However, there's a shock in store. Oedipal shock, vital shock. I guess I'm discovering this is not going to be the mother I was hoping for. Here she is, Christina Maria M. M was a Scandinavian name or word that meant honeybee. Look at the face of my beautiful mom here. There she is. So close, yet so far away. So unattainable. And this film is not a hit piece on my mom, so I'm all good with her now. And I love her 100%. But just look at this and realize what I was facing as a little baby person. Okay? Once again, here's my mom with Dorothy, my dad's mom, and Al, my dad's father. Just look closely at her face. That's the face of my love that I just can't quite reach. Now, all throughout my life, there were these great beings who have helped me to survive through love. And here was, after my father, of course, the first, here's the second, Nina, our German Shepherd, for the first 10 or so years of my life. And here we go. Me and my dad, Stan. When I first looked through these photos, I was just struck by the beingness and presence in this little Theo being in this image here. This is really quite indicative of the kind of energy I'm bringing to this lifetime. Right there, it's probably the first few days or weeks of my life. This is the tone I'm setting. It's just my baseline state is ecstatic. I'm just out for love. My life has been a will to love, a will to God, a will to truth. And the sense of willpower and strength that I get from this little person blows me away. So here he is, Stanley Cedar. He's the first of his family to go to college. Air Force captain, surgeon, obstetrician, gynecologist, young Jewish prodigy. He was my hero, and as I discovered looking through these images of him, and I realized this before, that my father is like an icon of beauty to me and love, and he filled more of the goddess position in my Oedipal configuration, whereas my mother Christina for me epitomized superior will and not so much that goddess position of nurturing and love and pleasure and beauty. But my father was my emotional rock and source of love. His body is the landscape. His body is architecture. His beauty, his body, his form, his virtues, his abilities, his manliness are structure and form of my art. And this picture is totally indicative of my father. Also funny, crazy, irreverent in some ways. Basically what you see here, this is how we roll, Cedar-wise. Yes, this is what I wanted. Love, affection, connection, intimacy. And in this picture you see, at a very young age, I'm establishing my dominance and my authority. But there is always these beings in my life of love, like my grandmother Dorothy, and in this picture you see what I'm talking about. Now this is a great image of my family upbringing. The mixture of my Jewish East Coast family on my father's side with the fragmented, fractured West Coast family of my mom's side. There's not many people left on my mother's side of the family when I came around. I did know her mom, Pearl, and I'll tell you about her in a minute. Never knew her dad, died before I was born. Never knew her brother, died before I was born. And we went to see her sister down in Orange County, who's conservative lady Aunt Dorley. But the real strong family was the Jewish family on the East Coast. And my mom loved Stan's mother, Dorothy, who's on the far right of this image. smiling in the chair, and I'm there next to her. I'm looking in a diagonal to the left, up towards my mother, and she is as individual and as isolated and as unreachable as human can be, at least as far as I'm concerned. But if you look at this image, you see all the warmth and connection and bustling human family love and activity all around her, and she is like a black hole in the middle of a swarming, vital galaxy of love. So this is my mom and dad, and one of the very few pictures I have of them together. How strange it is if you go through so many of these pictures, you see one, you see the other, but they're rarely together. And read what you like into this picture, but look at my mom's face and think of what my dad is getting himself into. His body language looks strained. He's kind of leaning away from her. He's not leaning in toward her. She's kind of leaning into him, but she already looks either resigned or... If you could tell me what you see in her face, I would love to know. But this picture is foreshadowing already. There's something about these guys that just never clicked. Something... But back to me. My disposition is ecstatic. It's out for love. It's a will to love. And a will to have people play with me in a state of ecstasy. And I'm realizing that this being who is my mother, who I would love beyond all belief, is not playing my reindeer games. This is one of the last pictures you're going to see of her smiling, and that looks kind of strained. My smile to me looks strained, and I'm not leaning in toward her. I'm kind of clenching my stomach. You'd be forgiven for believing that maybe this family pictured here had a shred of possibility of staying together and staying cohesive. But as you'll notice, my dad is about as far from my mom in this frame as he can get. My mom is looking in towards this emotional centerpiece of my grandmother kissing my head, me looking in towards my dad, and my dad, in a sense, hiding from my mom behind me. Which maybe he did do. Maybe I protected my dad from my mom more than he protected me from her. But my mom can't penetrate that love unit there, and I can't penetrate my mom. And this is like a nativity scene for me, but it's a nativity of the fracturing of my parents. And here you see me somewhere around age 1, nakers on the beach as per usual, but given the choice, who do I gravitate towards? It's Grandma Dorothy, and my beautiful mother Christina might as well be in another galaxy, though she's only 3 feet away. And the result thus far is, as you can see, poor little guy has to hide. Try to hide, but they ain't no place to hide. Another strategy I adopted from extremely early on, as soon as I could walk, I would wander out and scare the bejesus out of my mom from time to time, which I realized was a means of punishment, yes, and a way for me to just maintain and affirm to everyone that I am myself and I have my space. Here's my first birthday. And to me, this indicates that I'm taking on the tools of art and ready to embark and launch into my life as an artist. And again, here's my father's, the body of love and the structural form of everything incarnate. And this picture is the epitome of my love for my father and my affection with him and my bond with him and the meaning of my relationship with him is just right there in that picture. As my esteemed second ex-wife has always said, go where the love is. And if you see this picture with Grandma Dorothy at the top of Mount Diablo, you can just see me leaning in. Next picture with Mom, Christina. You tell me what this body language says to you. This picture maybe is the road not taken. Here's me apparently boozing it up with Mom while she's beginning to hammer down a few, and my beautiful mother is ramping up for 15 years of decline into alcoholism and mental illness. I made a decision. I could have gone down the road of trying to become an alcoholic like my mom in the efforts to get closer to her, by trying to become more like her. Maybe in this picture you see me contemplating that. However, I did not go down that route. I did not try to appease my mother. I did not try to be more like her in terms of becoming an alcoholic. I decided to go against her and battle her. And in this picture, you see me on the precipice of a decision whether or not to live. And the story here is that the woman on the right is my mother's mother, Pearl, whom I always knew as Abuela. Why Abuela? My parents spoke fluent Spanish. They had met in Spain when my father was working in the Air Force as a captain, as a military surgeon, gynecologist, and obstetrician. So at the age of 1, when my parents would address me in Spanish, I would respond in Spanish. Then they left on a trip, and they left me with Grandma Pearl, who you see here in the picture in the right, kind of in the dark, glowering there. And take a look at my face and know that I was left alone with Pearl while my parents went away. And when they got back, they would talk to me in Spanish, and I would answer in English. And then something happened where I started speaking a language of my own invention, and then I stopped speaking altogether. And I was informed by a psychic that during this time I was making the decision whether to live or die because I was so frustrated with my life as I saw it unfolding in the future with these parents, with this life circumstance, and contemplated suicide. And in this picture you see, I think, a moment close in time to that decision. My mother's mother was mentally ill and abusive towards my mom. And there was an unbroken chain of abuse that went right down the line into me. And I didn't know if I could handle it for 16 more years until I was old enough to leave home. At this time, I didn't know, I think, if I could survive or handle that. and I needed to respond to the situation. And in this picture, I think you see my answer. I am going to face this life, this world, and my mother head on and take it as it is. But I am not going to back down from my integrity, my presence, and my will to love, my will to truth, my will to God. And if you look closely in on my face and my mother's face in this picture, you'll see that there is going to be a battle of wills, and neither is going to give an inch. But again, peppered throughout this sequence, I come back to these images of myself where there's a kind of solitariness. Me unto myself always felt complete and whole and happy, and that somehow I was always in source. I was the source in a sense, and no one and nothing could push me off of my strength and my will. And in this picture, I just feel strength, will radiating, nourishing my older self, and blowing me away with how this little tender boy could be so strong. And this picture, for me, epitomizes my resolve after deciding to live, and has in it, to me, all of the command and leadership and power and strength and presence that I've felt all my life is right there in this little boy. And this is the result. I've made my decision, and it's full on. The world is going to hear from me. I'm willing to handle the shit. I'm willing to deal with whatever responsibility is required. This picture to me is the ultimate badass. So here we are, second birthday, Mom making an attempt to smile, but I see how things are in this world, and I've decided, regardless of my Oedipal frustration, I'm going to play the game, and I'm going to be with the people, and I'm going to lead, and I'm going to do it the way I think is right and good for everyone. But this is what I'm dealing with. And this picture is another shattering tableau for me personally of I'm at age 2, I'm out and about in society, and I'm trying to get protection from my mom, but my mom is trying to get protection from her mom. And we're all in this ego culture epitomized by that ego-faced man bust. We're all under oppression, and no one here has broken the chain. But I am not going to be suppressed by these. But here you can already see the defensive, if you like, false personality patterns in me already. The defensiveness, the insincerity, the emotional withholding. Here I am, testing some of my early theories of nonviolence and de-escalation. And this is the result. My method is provocation with intent to breed ecstasy and play. And the way to resolve this violent altercation was to giggle and lose face and be ecstatic. Here I am exercising one of my other strategies, which is to bond with nature. Here's another photo where I just busted down looking at this. Here I am at the top of Mount Diablo with Stan, and I just feel like I'm the rock, the center, the stable center, and he's leaning in towards me. It's like child is father to the man. This image begins the phase of Nicholas Edward Cedar is born on July 1st, 1966. And here I am back into being ecstatic and in love. And honestly, when I looked at these pictures for the first time, I thought they didn't correspond to my sense of my experience throughout my first 17 years of life as being mostly dark and depressed, honestly. But when I look at these pictures of myself, I feel so warmed and baked by the presence on this guy, this little man, this person. And so begins my career as Big Brother. And this turns out to be way more of an important gig than I had realized. So as you can see, me and Nick and Stan made a fantastic team in nature. And I was all about this Big Brother thing more than I realized. Yes, it's maybe a little heavy-handed in my style here. But once again, looking at that face, and I do see darkness and depression and futility and rage. But in the midst of it all, and always keep returning to this basic truth of who I am, that I'm ecstatic. I am God, and all there is God. And in this picture, I see a premonition of the devotee. But facts on the ground are not getting better with Mom. I'm as close as I can get physically, but I can't seem to make the connection. And the love longing in these pictures is just burning. How I love my mother, how I want my mother. But look at that face. And again, here's my strategy. I will maintain my integrity and my self-love and my authority no matter what. However, look at my mom. Look at her face. She's boozing it up right there on the beach, and she's definitely got more love for her booze than for me. This picture reminds me of Edvard Munch's The Scream. This figure's far in the background and the long strand and the absolutely impenetrable alienation in these figures. Mother and child, mother and child. There's my brother in the middle. Often he was trying to be the conciliatory presence, the peacemaker, trying to hold it together. But me and my mom are just going in different directions, and there's a battle of wills. Again, my resolve is just to simply be the authority, be the presence, be the commander. And the leadership and command and authority I feel off of this picture is just rocks me. Driven. So driven. So driven. And so like incessantly expansive, competitive, and driven. Once again, establishing dominance, except Christina is not having it. And so it's back to those areas of life where I can succeed, where I can expand, continuous like testing, always gravitating towards the test, passing the tests, taking on more tests. And here's the result. Somehow, my dad and I had a cult of confidence and fuckedness and cockiness and irreverence towards all authority and anyone and anything and anyone. And to me, this picture shows a moment of transmission from father to son of great importance. And this does epitomize me as a person. But you gotta know, there's just love behind this. Now begins the phase of the construction of the Keith Street house in Berkeley. And what you see here is the peak of my mom's risk-taking and creativity and power. In 1966, she gave birth to my brother Nick, and she built this innovative, outrageous house. She drove this project to build this improbable and extraordinary house. Apparently, as she tells it, she scouted out the lot. She found the lot, the property for building in Berkeley Hills. She found the architect, Doug Anawalt, and convinced everyone to build on this extremely steep lot a house that is based on a unique and original design called cathedral ceilings architecture that Doug Anawalt was a pioneer in developing. But to build an unusual architectural style on a steep lot was frowned upon by the banks, and they would not finance it. And here you can see, this tells the tale of my family so perfectly, that in spite of the emotional catastrophe between my parents, they were able to manifest something that's so bold, so improbable, that is aspiring to such heights and is so beautiful, and succeeded. They achieved it, and it became this love object. Here I am embedded in the construction site, and this picture is just a core image of my Oedipal configuration. It's my dad, who represents the structure and form of life and energy, the goddess, the Shakti, and the masculine principle, even though now I realize that the real driver of this project was my mother, not Stan. According to her, at least, Stan was more conservative and cautious. She wanted this cutting-edge architect. She wanted this lot with the extraordinary view. And she convinced Stan's parents to kick down the $10,000 needed to finance this. It cost $27,000 in 1966 dollars. So, without Christina's intense driving of this project, you wouldn't see what you see here, which is my father getting to incarnate the goddess, in my view, as form, as structure and beauty. And there you see me and my dad. That's just me soaking up the hero vibrations coming off my dad, soaking it up. And this image is me. This is my personality. This is my Oedipal. Just like turned inside out. And the result? This bohemian arts and crafts, original, exalted, cathedral ceiling, Berkeley, hippie haven mystery house. And honestly, my whole life I have felt this extreme sense of entitlement and exaltation, and this epitomizes it. And in these photos, this is just happiness. I'm embedded in the goddess, in love, with the house, with my father, with nature, with God. In love, in happiness. And if this is not a picture that is premonitory of my Warner Williams future, I don't know what is. And there's my mom. How could I not want her, be attracted to her? But it's just not clicking. I just can't get started with Christina. So once again, I resort to those areas where I can be strong and continue in my growth and development, and it's on towards the world, towards leadership again. And as I'm discovering in these pictures, a stronger, better relationship with my brother than I realized or remember, but I'm revising these memories in light of recent evidence. Our parents provided us with the most extraordinary access to all these different parts of California and the wilderness and nature. My life was embedded in this unbelievable beauty, in this epic beauty. And this is a picture of me. This is love, ecstasy, running with Nina into the nature, into goddess, into the beach. To the point of I've become a mythical creature and a hybrid of dog and human. I'm always able to access this, my baseline state of just ecstasy. But you gotta know, my growing up, me and my brother, my mom and dad, in spite of these terrible, catastrophic things, our life was epic. And always always I must lead. Somehow, this picture is something, a moment, an event I don't remember. How could I forget? This is one of the last pictures you see of my mom smiling. And this is really, in a way, our family's final attempts to be together, to have togetherness, to go on road trips together. But man, I never saw my mom happier than when she's just being a total freak. And this is just God and love to me. My father, his body, our dog Nina, nature. God, love, dog, father. Here's our last family outing, attempting to hold things together. It's me in the front. Again, I'm shocked to look at myself because my memory is just of being so collapsed and depressed and dark. But I just am radiating strength and hopefulness of connection with my mother. On the houseboat with Brother Nick. And again, as my father's relationship with my mother was ending, his and my relationship got better. It was growing. He was growing. But this is the facts on the ground. We're about to traverse this emotional wasteland. And there's my father helping Nick and me across this region of just emotional devastation, catastrophe. This is right around the time of the divorce. My mom looks like she's in Vietnam. And I'm looking out of the frame towards the viewer. I'm looking at the viewer saying, "Do you know what I'm going through? Can you see what I'm dealing with?" But this picture has the foreshadowings. It just gets so dark on the left side and above. There's this encroaching darkness. And this picture is the end of the line and bespeaks just sheer terror for me. If you look at her face and my face and the situation, it's a metaphor for the fear and the terror in life. For me. And there is my mother on the precipice of disaster, end of her marriage. And my father alone, set free from Christina, cut loose. And here's the result. Me and Nick, embedded in nature, in utter devastation, emotional devastation. But once again, I resort to my aloneness, where I've always found this strength and this will to love. And if you look at this face, for me, when I look at this face, I feel such power and presence and will that I'm just blown away and almost intimidated that this is what I've had to live up to. And Nick found his strength in his aloneness. And boy, isn't that wonderful picture of Nick? Isn't that just epic? And post-divorce, the 3-man unit was still strong. It worked. We worked together well. And the result is we recovered amazingly, and nature and Stan and love gave us incredible strength to recover. And my duties as older brother really loomed much larger than I realized. These pictures of my relationship with Nick, most of them taken by Stan, represent, I think, a kind of collaboration between the 3 of us to portray beauty and inspiration, leadership, love. And here I am, me and Nick, performing archetypal older brother, younger brother relationship functions, tests and trials, achievement. Trying to be a good leader. Of course, I just love this picture and this sequence of Nick following suit to his big brother with success and ecstasy. Fun. This picture really epitomizes this collaboration between me and my brother and my father and nature. And Nick was able to let me have my sort of contemplative solitude. As I said, here I am in this playful image with Nick, my elbow on his head. We were closer than I remembered, and I'm revising my memories in light of recent evidence. But the result is proof, achievement, demonstration, balance, equanimity, happiness. And authority. This picture looks a little bit like a devotee and the guru, and it just resonates with my love for my guru and foreshadowing of being a devotee. In this picture, I see a combination of both my self-protectiveness, but also my sense that I am whole and happy and complete unto myself, and I am God, and all there is God. But in these images, you see the foreshadowings of death of my father, and in this picture, how I want to go in and reach in and hug and love and kiss and squeeze that little Theo. And here we are, looking across the threshold of the gateway of death and ready to usher our Father through it to the beyond. Our Father. There I am around age 14 or 15, shortly before my father died, and this is the houseboat in Sausalito. And those are the stairs leading up to the bedroom where my father died. And this is to me, represents the death of my father and my sort of collapse. So this is my father. This is the body that nature took into her mystery. Nature took my father's body back into the mystery. And we were left on this side of life with the mystery shining down. And all throughout this time, I always had this resort to some essential principle of the divine, of strength, and of absolute will to love, to truth, to God, and to bringing people into a state of ecstatic play with me. And here's my answer to death, standing on the houseboat in Sausalito. This is my answer to death. I'm standing at the crossroads at age 16, confronting the loss of my father, but I just did not believe that my father died or could die. I know and knew that my father is immortal, is a God. So I was in numbness, in shock, for at least a year, and would not wake up out of it until the first great awakening of my life, which was falling in love with Janine at age 17. And so ends this movie of Theo Cedar Jones, From Birth to 16. And this last frame is me rowing around the houseboat where my father died. I'm back to my aloneness, back to the strength that's going to carry me through the next phases of my life.